discretion is advised.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the New to Wrestling Podcast After Dark. If you're watching on YouTube, just take deep breaths. You can already see our guests, and it's very exciting. Take deep breaths. We'll make it through together. Um, so tonight, joining us, I have the absolute honor and privilege. Not only do we have Geordie Day with us, who is a documentary filmmaker. He has other greats like Tough Guy, Unnatural Enemies, Born Blue, that I can think of off the top of my head, among many others. And we also have joining us the latest subject of his most recent documentary that we had the absolute privilege of watching, Nevermore, the Raven story. We also have Raven with us tonight. Thank you so much, both of you, for joining us. This is such an honor, and I'm really excited to talk about this. It was amazing, this
Right.
documentary.
Oh yeah. Thank you so much for letting us peep it a little early. Yeah, it was fantastic.
Thank you.
Thanks.
I want to start off by talking about like the documentary filmmaking process, because I feel like documentary is such an interesting medium, because I feel like a lot of times it starts one place and kind of when you meet the subject, it ends up maybe someplace totally different, or you like really never know what you're getting into. So you guys, I believe, met like 2022 or 2021, or like got in touch and then started like having discussions. How, like, what was that process like in meeting, and like where the genesis of the documentary began?
Yeah,
Geordie?
yeah, that's right. So I had heard Raven on the Stone Cold Steve Austin podcast and was kind of blown away by his perspective on the wrestling industry. It felt very unique. He's obviously a really brilliant guy. And in particular, I was fascinated by, there are actors like Daniel Day-Lewis that are so-called like method that let the character kind of take over
Mm,
their lives. And he was sort of talking about that as like a character in wrestling. And he was certainly like drawing from some unresolved trauma into his character. And then he kind of was now reliving that trauma, and the line between character and who he truly was kind of blurred. So I was
mm,
like, wow, that feels kind of original
Right.
storytelling. Like I haven't really heard about a wrestler kind of going that deep and somebody struggling with the psychology of a character in that way. And I was like, I think
mm.
that this would make for an amazing documentary. And then I reached out to Raven, and it was clear that yeah, he's a brilliant guy, and he seemed relatively open to doing the project. And I think we get along pretty well. So yeah, we're off to the races, and we started at the very tail end of 2021. Really, 2022, we started shooting, and we're excited to share the project.
Yeah, it's you guys really need to go see it. But also I am curious about, because I know that Raven, you were talking about um it being difficult to watch back, like in terms of the editing process. And I am curious, like, how involved were you in the editing process? Because it, like, you are so brilliant. Like, you have just, even like on paper, a very high IQ. And a lot of people in the documentary mentioned you have such an incredible wrestling IQ. And so I was like, I think that's so interesting too, to like, if you put that into a like a documentary landscape, where it's like how your brain can work on putting the pieces together, even in editing. Were you very involved in that process at all?
No, I didn't want to be. I just wanted to make sure I had final say, like not final cut, but like if I wanted something not brought up or something brought up, I wanted to be able to have my way with that. But I did tell him I wanted it to be warts and all. So I mean, so there wasn't much I was gonna. There's almost nothing I was gonna take out, but I wanted it to be a quality production. I didn't want it to, and I think I gave some, a few editorial notes about this, like saying that you shouldn't have this footage of this people here because they have nothing to do with it, and just minor stuff that didn't affect the whole thing. But the reason it was hard for me to watch was because I wanted it so personal and to show my complexities and my tortured poetic genius quotation marks. Um, I was going to have all my baggage, and which I wanted in there because I wanted people to see it because I wanted people to, mental illness is, a pain in the ass, you know what I mean? But it should be something that should be spoken about publicly,
Right.
not, hidden away. But by the same token, I mean, I've dealt with all the issues that I talk about in the movie, and I'm fine with them. But having them all thrown back at my face in a 2-hour window with, with and visual audio visual component, of seeing the whole picture, seeing it is just it's taxing emotionally. So
Yeah.
I really enjoy the movie, but for me, it's hard to watch. And it was hard for me to watch to get around to watch. I think that's what you're talking about with the editing. It was
Mhm.
more hard for me to get around to watch it to even give my editing opinion because I didn't want to. I didn't feel like dealing with the baggage.
Mm.
Yeah. And especially
You know,
because
I,
it's like editing your story. Like you're saying it's like you want it to be warts and all, so it's like hard to edit like how you were actually feeling because it's raw footage, you know? So it's really that's such an interesting point. That's really crazy. Um,
are you saying I'm
Jo
crazy? I'm
yes,
kidding.
but
I'm
that we
kidding.
knew. We
Yeah,
we
we didn't know that. We did know that.
if you've watched any of Raven, you know there's a little something. But you had to be a little bit to be an ECW also, I think. But so
Well,
Geordie,
the whole motto was of ECW: if you passed the drug test, you were fired.
you were fired. Oh my God.
It's
And
beautiful.
I think that that's why it just it was so interesting. Like that's why it was just there's very few adjectives I can draw to describe what ECW is to watch even. So I can't imagine being a part of it, especially like when it really was kicking off and being such a huge part of it. Um but I'm curious, Geordie, so you were a wrestling fan. So because
Yeah.
are you a Canadian boy?
Canadian, yeah, I'm from
So I
Calgary,
mean,
Canada.
wrestling has to be involved in the blood. It's wrestling and hockey, I feel.
Yeah, for sure. Like my family was family friends with the Hart family. So like
Oh, wow.
yeah, Calgary's not that big of a city, but it's known as a wrestling city because
Mhm.
of the Harts and because they had that school there. But I just, yeah, I loved wrestling and I particularly loved ECW.
Wow.
I think like with ECW is for me as a kid, like I heard someone once say that like when they first heard like NWA, like they were like ended up becoming a rapper, they were scared of NWA. That's like how I felt
Yeah.
with ECW. Like
Yeah.
I had like because I like my family knew wrestlers and like I mean it was relatively well known that like wrestling was a work, but with
Hmm.
for me like ECW didn't
Feel
feel
like
like a
that.
work. It was
Hmm.
like, oh no, no, no,
Yeah.
like wrestling's a work, but these guys are actually crazy. Like this thing that they did was actually real. It was that like, but this was real kind of
Mm.
feeling.
Yeah.
And I was scared of the wrestlers as a kid, like the ECW wrestlers.
Wow.
I thought they were actually maniacs. I thought they were crazy. And so yeah, it was like that and the fans scared me too because they were so bloodthirsty and would go crazy when
Whoa.
things looked genuinely disconcerting through the TV.
That's amazing.
That is the best way to describe ECW.
Oh,
When we watch, it's like if I could go back in time and be in that crowd, I don't know if I would. Like, like I would, but would. You know what I mean? And I think it's hard for it to feel like a work when people are getting thrown through flaming tables. You know, it's like, how is
Exactly.
that a work? That feels real.
here's the thing: when wrestling at its finest is an emotional, it's an emotional play that
Mm,
is very visceral. You can feel
Yeah.
it viscerally. And so when it's done right, and ECW was done right for 90% of it, was done perfect, or not maybe not 90%, but 95% of it was done right. Whether it was done perfect, it's to be debated. But the fact is that it it touched you on an emotional level, which is when wrestling's at its best. Because here's the thing. Okay, you can punch somebody you can go up to a stranger, punch him in the face, and he'll be in pain, but he'll be fine. You go to a stranger and you show that you've taken his girlfriend and he didn't know about it. That kind of pain, psychological pain,
Hmm.
is so much more devastating. And that's what I kind of dealt with as the Raven character. I had my character always deal in the emotional stakes. And
Yeah.
wrestling, when it's done to its finest, is always done with emotional stakes. You know,
Yeah.
Yeah.
the title belt means a lot, if you have emotional stakes tied to it, it means so much more than just the belt alone.
That is so, yeah, that's a really good point. And I feel like ECW did such a great job of that because it did really blur those lines of like what's real and what's not. And so like those emotional things like felt so potent, like and so real. And um, I'm so curious because like the psychology of Raven obviously is a huge part of the film. It's obviously just a huge part of your life, goes without saying. And it's interesting because there's so many times in the documentary where you talk about how difficult it is for you to look back. It's kind of what we were talking about before. But Raven's character, like he's kind of built on his past experiences. Like it comes up a lot, like his dad and like his whole reason for going to ECW is because of his like beef with Tommy Dreamer because he was bullied and he's trying to get his vengeance. I just think it's so interesting that that character is kind of like based or like foundationally on like past experiences, but like you
But all human beings are. I mean,
yeah.
we're all built with the memories. They say, well, whatever you learn from 0 to 5 influences like 85% of your life or something. Because that's when you're most at your most learn it and your most ability to learn and to pick up stuff and because your brain's a tabula rasa. It's just a blank slate. And
Yeah.
so everybody's tied, whether they think it or not. We're all tied and we're all victims of our childhood, no matter how great or how poorly they went. That's what informs us as adults, you know?
Hmm. That's so
And
true.
yeah, so I mean, so Raven was just showing that on his sleeve, for everybody to see. He
Yeah.
he felt he Raven felt he was a martyr for society. Like Jesus Christ is a martyr for the whole real world or whatever, I guess. But Raven, the reason I had that pose was because Raven was a martyr for society's dysfunction,
Mm.
and he was going to feel their pain upon his back, you know, in his grandiose visions, in his heady dreams and nightmares. He was that person, which is kind of egotistical and kind of full of shit. He's kind of full of shit.
No, that's
Yeah.
that's great. I mean, Kelsey, we're talking about just that rivalry with like Tommy Dreamer and how Kelsey was saying that like if it were like to be watched as like a movie, Raven would be like the babyface protagonist. He was bullied in high school. He's getting like his revenge. But when you like are putting it in this like scenario of wrestling, like everybody's like all for, Tommy Dreamer. He's like the golden boy of like ECW. So
Well,
like
in real life, Raven would still be the heel because he as all good heels in wrestling do. They have a point. They just take it too far.
right.
And
Mm.
so Raven, he's whiny about it. He
Hmm.
complains about it. Nobody likes whiners or complainers. You know, Bret Hart, Canadian. I don't know why we brought up Canadians earlier. I guess are you a Canadian-based show?
Oh no, I'm in Philly. Kelsey's in Jersey.
Because
Oh,
I'm
But
Canadian, Raven.
Yeah.
just the way she said it, the way she phrased it, I thought it might be a Canadian-based show.
I
Oh,
could
okay.
totally see that.
I
Yeah.
see what you're saying. Yeah, yeah.
But the Bret Hart, when he was a heel, he was so good because he should have been the hero, and
right,
but a real hero would have walked away.
right.
Yeah.
When things went south, a real hero would have walked away when the people no longer wanted to follow him. He would have said, "That's fine, you can do your own thing." But he didn't. Instead, he pressed the issue over and over, and he became such a fantastic heel. It was an amazing turn because he had shown nothing of that ability prior. I think
Right.
because
Uh,
he'd always been
Yeah.
a baby face, or the Hart Foundation were kind of heels, but they really weren't heels. You know what I mean?
yeah. No, and we recently like just watched that heel turn like as it progressed. And that's definitely it's so I was talking to Kelsey, I was like the reason I or at least the reason I felt like the ECW crowd like was so game to just like hate on Raven. It's just like no one wants to like no one likes when someone's playing the victim. Like we all can like sympathize with a victim, but when we feel like
Right.
someone's playing that part, we're like, oh, I don't what is this? So I feel like it enabled you to kind of just like to like play that line where like, oh, he has a point, but like, oh, why? Why is it like this? You know? It was great.
If he was a hero, he would just keep it to himself.
Love it.
Yeah.
I-
Especially in wrestling, I feel.
right. Babyface is just taking on the chin.
Every Everything is in wrestling is it's life. It's life to times 100. You know what I mean?
Uh, uh,
It's rooted in the basics of life. Good guy. I mean, winning and losing, but it takes it to an extreme. No pun intended. It takes it to an extreme of of the good guys and bad guys, and bad guys have to show their ass. At some point they have to show why they're a bad guy. Why they're a cat. When a push comes to shove, they have to be cowardly. When it's time to stand their ground, or they have to whine or complain, or they have to show a heel quality that is called showing your ass. Not to be confused with mooning somebody. Um, but and a baby face has to you know stand for determination and in the face of adversity, and it takes it to an extreme. It's like an opera, for the masses.
right.
Yeah.
I always called like the wrestling the last like theater in the round, like the last kind of
Mm.
like way that we like
Sure.
take in entertainment like that. I my next question was throughout the documentary you talk about like conflating the person with the character and kind of having to like do the work to kind of separate that. Like how long was that process for you before you felt comfortable being like oh, the wrestler is in this box. This is where, he lives and the person is back. What did that process, or how long did that process kind of take for you?
I don't know. I don't really know. It took a few years on a therapist's couch. You know what I mean? On a psychologist's couch. You know. But it's like Will from Will and Grace said, being on in therapy, it's like you're in your own talk show and you're the only guest and everybody's fascinated by what you have to say.
Yep. It's truly the best.
Yeah.
I also love in the documentary there's so many pictures. And was it Geordie, was it you that went through all the pictures or like
Yes.
some yeah, had to like dive in and like find all of the picture. Like first of all, I love that there were so many pictures. I was going to say not to be confused with mooning even though you did a lot of that as well. They're showing your ass and mooning, you are an expert in both.
Mhm.
Um but I loved all those pictures. And like, I feel like you are kind of like me a little bit, where it's like, once I latch onto a subject, I have to know everything. So to me, that process is enjoyable, where it's like, to see these pictures, even though it's nothing to do with me objectively, like, and how long did that take? Like, just kind of parsing through what was there, what was usable, like, just what that was like.
Yeah, I mean, it was really Yeah, I'm with you. I think we share that like fascination with people, I think. And like it's just like such a privilege to get to kind of go on these deep dives as like a career and
Hmm.
kind of examine someone's life. Like Raven, I think that's what got me fascinated in the project is, like Raven's kind of known as the master of psychology within wrestling. And so
Yeah.
you're kind of like, well, what's this like the master of psychology of wrestling, that same mind that brought us that genius kind of drove himself crazy. So like what an interesting subject and an interesting life to sort of examine. And so getting to go through all the photos and like all the videotapes and everything else was really, really cool. And it was, yeah, like it wasn't just the photos, like we went through a bunch of old matches. Raven had all
Hmm.
these
Yeah.
boxes of VHS tapes. It's hard to put like a specific timeline on it because I edited the film, so it was like sort of like I mean it like on and off basically took, like a year to edit it. So it was
Wow.
kind of going back and forth between finding footage, sorting out the narrative, going back and
How
finding
many times?
footage.
How many times did you fly in to meet with me? I forget.
I think
I
we
keep getting asked that.
flew in twice. So like yeah, that was like I first edited the documentary and it
No, I
was
mean all total, all your visits to get the material too and to film it.
uh yeah,
Like
like
10
like
visits.
including shooting. I don't know if it was 10, but yeah, like maybe like 5 or 6 or something like that.
Well,
Wow.
including the ones where you met me on the road too, right?
Oh yeah. Yeah, I was back and forth between Atlanta for like those couple of years there. And
Wow.
it was awesome. Like I've said this too, like in other interviews, I was like kind of expecting Raven to be tougher to work with just because he said in the interviews, he's like, oh, like I like had basically had this reputation in wrestling. And I know he's grown a lot, but it just wasn't my experience that he was difficult to work with at all. It was always like kind of
I should
fun.
have been more difficult.
Yeah, you should have been. You didn't live up to the Raven character though. Like you were a pretty nice guy.
Oh my God. That is so funny. Because it's like, you want a taste of the raven, of the subject. I
No,
get
I'm
that.
I'm glad that he was a good guy.
You're like,
I've
I'm
dealt with
actually
enough.
okay.
Yeah,
You're like,
on other
there's a
projects.
reason. I'm actually okay with it. Thank
Yeah, it
you.
was great. It was great. It was a lot like I mean I don't know that was a bit of a rambling answer, but basically it was a lot of fun.
I love that. That's not a rambly answer. I'm t really enjoying everything. And going back just quickly to Raven, you're so candid about talking about therapy, which I love. And I feel like we have really moved into this day and age in just the world in general, where it's like way more common to talk about it. But I feel like especially wrestlers and even in the documentary showing all the physical therapy that you do for your body and like how you take care of your body, your mental health, like all of that I feel like is so great because especially in wrestling, and Xavier and I talk about it a lot, there's no like aftercare, healthcare, retirement plans for wrestlers. Like there's really kind of a lack of that in the wrestling business, and it is a lot better. But I really think it's so great how candid you are about it. And I think that's such a great, somehow like a great through line from the Raven character because it's like you were always saying like the emotional, almost like taboo thing that people were like, whoa, like we're talking about like, neglect and shithead dads like on like in promos and stuff. Like it feels like taboo, but you kind of have this ability like in your life to talk about those things with ease, even though you are separate people. Does that like make sense?
Yeah, yeah, I get it. Um, but that's what I wanted to show. I wanted to show that, you know, that I'm not that I wanted people to see that there's reasons for my behavior. Not that it excuses it, because it doesn't. Nothing excuses bad behavior, but there's reasons for it,
Hmm.
and why I behaved the way I did, which wasn't always necessarily the best behavior.
Yeah.
I wasn't trying to, but yet I'm not trying to make it like I'm not trying to justify it or anything like that because I don't believe it's, that's right. I think you take your lumps, and my career didn't work out quite as well as I wanted. It worked out very, very well, but it didn't work out quite as well as I wanted. But that I would think at least 50% the blame goes to me,
Mm.
because of my attitude and stuff. I always had to be the smartest guy in the room, even if I wasn't. And the worst part was I had to make sure everybody knew I was.
Right.
And that's not an endearing quality, to be sure.
Mm.
No, but it is like interesting now, like having seen the movie, like what informed that. You know what I mean? It's
Yeah,
it's
for
a little
sure.
bit like, um, just as like a fan of yours, like growing up, um, I want to say like in like '02, '03, towards like the tail end of you being in like the WWE, I was always bummed. I was like, where's Raven? Like, because I was always drawn to like your misfit characters. It was always like Raven, your Jeff Hardys, your Mick Foley's. Like, I was always just like, oh, like this makes sense to me. Um, so so yeah, it's nice to like know that like to see like what informed kind of what happened. Because for a lot of fans, I'm sure that's a big, question mark.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I feel like in terms of mental health, I don't know if this experience is similar to you, but I feel like with mental health, it's like your whole life you're kind of like fighting something you don't understand. Like so you're using like a knife, you're using a weapon, you're using a hand, like whatever, and then suddenly someone's just like your therapist or whatever is like, it's a werewolf. And you're like, oh, and so you use silver bullets. Does that make sense? Like you kind
Yeah,
of you
yeah,
get the
it
tools.
totally. When my therapist, he left it on his desk. One of my diagnoses, my shrink. Actually, he was my dictionologist, but he's a psychiatrist, and he left my diagnosis of narcissist disorder, narcissistic personality disorder, and histrionic personality disorder, and blah blah blah. And I was able, and he left the office, and I was just happened to glance at his desk, and I could read upside down what it said, because you can, yeah, you do that when you read somebody's, yeah,
Yes.
and then I go, so that's what I have, and he goes, oh, you weren't supposed to see that, and he goes, it's not good for patients to know their diagnosis, and I go,
Hmm.
why? I go, this is good for me because now I know there's a reason for my behavior more than just I'm a fucking idiot, you know. But it's true, I mean,
Yeah. Yeah.
like it gave me something to go. Okay, I'm not using this as an excuse. I'm not using this as a reason I'm not blaming my problems on that. But now at least I understand why I'm behaving in these ways that I can't understand. And so I think it's depending on the patient, sometimes it should be told, the patient should be told what their diagnosis is as opposed to being kept from them. But I can also understand why they would keep it from them because sometimes it might make you act in that way, to live up to the diagnosis,
Yes. Yeah,
you know.
totally.
But to me, it was a revelation.
Yeah, I feel that. I feel like it would be, to me, it would be like oh, I'm not just a piece of garbage. Like
Right,
there's like a
exactly.
jumping point for me to work through it instead of let it work through me, if that like to be cliche about it, I guess. Um, I'm so curious because if we're also, is it okay if I ask you a few more questions? I want to be respectful of
Yeah.
both of your time.
Sure, I got a few more questions in me.
Okay, thank you.
Jordy, you got a few more?
I'm good. Yeah.
Okay, great. Um, I'm so curious because I did not know that you started as kind of like on the back end or like behind the scenes at WWE or like not quite behind the scenes. You had like your gimmick and but you were doing like you were in those rooms and I think correct me if I'm wrong, they were kind of setting you up to be like a like higher talent like eventually at WWE.
No, what it was I was when I got there, they made me an associate producer on Monday Night Raw, And
Wow.
so, but that was when I was there in '94, and they were grooming me to be on the booking committee.
Yes.
Um, Not to be a higher talent, but to be a behind the scenes higher positioned. And
Yeah.
but I didn't want to be a booker. I wanted to wrestle. You know, that's what I got into business for. But I was as an associate producer, I was also getting paid. I got health care as a wrestler. I did, which as a wrestler I didn't, but I got health care because I was an office employee. I
Hmm.
got a six-figure contract, but at the end of the day, I wasn't doing what I wanted to do, and I was like, I can't. I have to quit. You know, and see where my luck takes me. You know.
Yeah. And I feel like because like many like in the film many people said you have this high wrestling IQ to go to an organization like ECW that's so collaborative like in terms of storylines and like character development and things like that. Like I feel like it's way more of a discussion versus when you went back to WWE. And also I think your run in WCW was also great. But when you go back to WWE and it kind of feels like things are just coming down from the top and it's like, this is your story, like, this is just what you do. I'm like, I just think that, and it's just like, I don't know, maybe a hot take, but I just feel like at ECW, you had all this like creative freedom to develop your character. And like, you had this great, fully formed character when you went back to WWE. And yet somehow, they just kept putting you in hardcore matches. And like you weren't as much on the mic. And I feel like that is one of your strongest abilities aside from your wrestling talent. I feel like you do promos that are so amazing and like intelligent. And like I just watched one today where you were doing a promo on Jeff Hardy and you like quoted Napoleon and like you said you did like a little kind of like the poetry at the end. I mean it's just so brilliant and I do you feel like your creativity was like maybe a little inhibited when you went back to WWE?
Yeah. But that was because of behind the scenes baggage I had. And
Mm,
but yeah, I would have loved to have been used better in WWE, but yeah, that's not the way the ball went.
yeah.
The ball was tossed the other way.
To somebody else's
And I was
hands.
standing there with my hands open, ready for it, and I was like, no,
Amazing.
it just that's the way, you know, that really did me and my psychologically did me a lot of damage because at the time I like 90% of the world equates what I did with who I am.
Right.
Most people
Yeah.
equate what they do with who they are, not who they are with who they are. You know, we take what our job does. So if our job treats us like shit, then we feel like we're a piece of shit. You know,
Yep.
and vice versa. You know, if we're not being used to our fullest at work, then it leaves us feeling unfulfilled at home. And I had to learn the difference. Then, thanks to the shrink's couch, the psychologist's couch, I learned that one has nothing to do with the other. You know, and that helped
Yeah.
me. That freed me up to become a better person too, because I wasn't so worried about my career. I mean, I was, but I was able to not let it affect me any more than it already had as a person.
Mm, I love that. And I just think that's so interesting to, again, like to be so candid about that, especially in a business where it's like you are the product. Like you are, and I think you've said this before where it's like you're not just, and it might have been on the Stone Cold podcast episode where it was like you're not just talent, you are like behind the scenes, you're almost like your own travel agent, you're your own stunt coordinator, like you do all of these things. So I feel like especially wrestling, it makes complete sense to kind of get lost in it because it's so all
All encompassing.
encompassing. Yeah.
It's called the bubble.
Mm.
We
Yeah.
People get stuck in the bubble. It's why wrestlers had mullets 15 years after mullets went out of style.
That's
You
amazing.
know, because they were too busy they were too wrapped up in the. That's part of what made ECW so great was it captured the cultural zeitgeist.
Right.
It
Yeah.
played music. It played current music. It didn't play, it didn't play stock music. It played, trendy, hip urban music. It it treated it stepped. Paulie was great about stepping outside the bubble, finding what was culturally happening and tying it in. Like
Mhm.
Yeah.
after Divine Brown, the prostitute, got arrested for blowing Hugh Grant
Hmm.
in California, in Los Angeles or Hollywood or whatever. We got Divine Brown to come on the show,
Amazing.
and Stevie was going to bring her as my valet, and I said she wasn't slutty enough.
Amazing.
Which
Oh,
is brilliant. It's
right.
so brilliant. Speaking of this kind of like candid conversation, what, Geordie, I'm curious what, because there are a lot of crazy, incredible stories in this documentary. Like the Xavier and I were watching, and there were a few parts where we were just like, what was the most surprising, or like, did you have a moment where you're like, you're recording, you're filming, you're like, oh my God, this is so insane.
I assume you're
Yeah.
talking about the slip and slide.
For sure.
Well,
For
it's
sure.
the not the elephant in the room, it's the rhino in the room.
Literally.
All right.
Yeah, it was really fascinating. Like the crazy stories like ended up in the documentary. So it's like it's hard like the slip and slide one is awfully crazy. Obviously, Sandman overdosing is kind of crazy,
That
but
was
like
insane.
the stories are in there to kind of capture like I think wrestling kind of had this crazy rock and roll kind of behind the scenes thing going on for a while, and
Mm.
then it blew up to something so big, and it took a really like the thing that's surprising to me is it took so long, given the popularity, for wrestling to actually develop into a more corporate culture. Like
Mm.
I think things
Yeah.
are more like professional behind the scenes now, but it's amazing that
Yeah.
it took as long as it did to get there.
But
Like,
Yeah.
I feel like part of that's like it's like WWE was like a family business for so long that like before it was like publicly like traded, it was really like,
yeah, and I
whatever Vince
guess,
wants.
Well, but yeah,
I guess,
it was like okay nowadays
yeah,
because the Pentagon admitted that the UFOs they saw the UAPs were real. They weren't made up or whatever.
Hmm.
It took the stigma off being a UFO believer.
Mm,
And
Oh,
in
yeah.
wrestling had the stigma of being fake, so nobody paid any mind to what they did in the corner. I'll let the children play in the corner and do what they want to do, and
Yeah.
nobody put any stock or barrel into what was going on behind the scenes.
yeah,
wow,
That's
that's
such a
crazy.
great point. And I think you may have said this that you were like, I'm actually okay that kayfabe kind of broke because it like freed a lot of us from just being like, yeah, well, it's not fake. It's like just this incredible it's a show. It's like you come to see a show. It's like I forget what interview this was recently, but someone was like, yeah, Superman's not real either. Like, he doesn't actually fly. They use like stunts. Like it's like a show, a performance. Like so I think it's weird that wrestling gets this thing over it where it's like, but it's fake. It's like, okay, but like there's people are still flipping through tables, like doing pile driver. Like it's still it's actually like an aspect of realness that people just don't if you don't get it, you don't get it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, people the best thing they ever did was Vince was saying that wrestling was predetermined, the outcome was predetermined. Because it allowed people the onus of going instead of them going it's fake, it's fake, it's fake. They could go it may be fake, but the outcome is I mean, but the athleticism is off the charts, you
Yeah,
know,
exactly.
and so they could respect it for an athletic and gymnastics. You're not trying to. It's won by scores. You know what I mean? It's not. There's not. It's opinionated. Wrestling's the same way. It's opinionated. It appears. How was I going to phrase that? I don't know. It doesn't matter. You get my point.
Mhm. I
I'm
love
getting
the
tired.
UFO metaphor too. That's like so great. That makes a lot of sense. Um, and
Um,
I just kind of, do
Oh,
you have a
oh,
question?
I know.
Sorry.
My point was
Oh, go
sorry.
ahead. Yeah.
Yeah, but it's like gymnastics or the opera. It's not an actual gymnastics is a competition, but it's also a show. and you grade them on a score, the opera is not real. It's an action. It's an activity that expresses the moral complexities of life through a show. And wrestling is a show that you can look at like gymnastics or athletics, but it just because the outcome isn't predetermined doesn't mean that what is accomplished in there isn't something spectacular when it's done
Right.
correctly. And
Very
when it's
true.
done terribly, when it's done wrong, it's the absolute worst. Unless it's really, really bad, and then it's great again.
Yeah, that's like
It's
most art, I feel like.
it
But
circles back to being incredible.
right. But you guys are going to be in Philly this weekend, the 11th and 12th for the premiere. Are you excited to be back in Philly, in your stomping grounds?
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. A bunch of my buddies are gonna show up, and I'm looking forward to seeing them. And yeah, it's the 11th and 12th at Philamoca,
Hmm.
and I'm looking forward to seeing the venue because I heard it's really cool. It's like a old mausoleum or something.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Hmm.
And then I heard the Blue Meanies doing the Q&A. That's going to be interesting.
Yes, the Blue Meeting will be doing the Q&A, and then that'll be on the 11th, and then the 12th it'll be a matinee show. We'll be doing a VIP tickets holders will get to meet and greet with me before the shows, and after the show I'll do a Q&A with Blue Meanie, as you said, and then the 22nd will be in Baltimore at the 7 p.m. at the Charles Theater. And the 21st will be in Baltimore the day before for a meet and greet at Jimmy's Seafood. And then the 28th will be back in Atlanta, my current hometown, my hometown for the last 30 years,
Mm.
at the Plaza Theater. And then on November 18th, it'll be released on streaming on Amazon, iTunes, Apple, YouTube, Vudu. Uh, so And November 18th, if we're not coming to your town, then November 18th, you can watch it on streaming services.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys
So
so much for
exciting.
your time. I'm just going to wrap us up real quick. Thank you all. This has been another edition of the New to Wrestling podcast. Wherever you guys are, if you're in the Philly area like us, you can catch this weekend. Raven is going to be premiering Nevermore, the Raven Effect, at the Philly Mocha. All right, guys. Thank you so much for your time. For
Thank
Raven,
you.
Geordie, and Kelsey, I'll catch you on the next one.
We'll see you there.